5:30, so I'm going to call this meeting to order. First, a reminder that meetings of the Select Board are meetings conducted in public. They are not meetings of the public. Nonetheless, members of the public shall be afforded reasonable opportunities to express opinions about matters conducted by the Select Board so long as order is maintained. The rules for public comment are: at the conclusion of a Select Board discussion on an agenda item, but before any action is taken, there may be 10 minutes afforded to public comment. Comments made by the public must be addressed to the chair, to the Select Board as a whole, and not to any individual members of the Select Board or members of the public. Members of the public must be acknowledged by the chair before speaking. If a member of the public has already spoken on a topic, they should not be recognized again until others have first been given the opportunity to comment. Order and decorum shall be maintained throughout the meeting. Personal, impertinent, threatening, or profane remarks will not be tolerated. For those who are participating via Zoom, please note that chat is not an appropriate avenue for public comment. All public comments must be made verbally when acknowledged by the chair. A reminder to all that this meeting is being recorded and may appear on the internet. Okay, so are there adjustments to the agenda?
I don't have any unless you want to add the Select Board work session from Monday.
As like a
Just
like
other
a
business.
report? Yeah, we can do that, yeah.
Because there's no action, it's just a report.
Yeah, so we'll mention that under other business.
Yes.
Does anybody else have any agenda adjustments? Approval of minutes?
You don't have a quorum of people that were in attendance at that meeting, so.
That is true.
So Charlie's here.
That is true. Oh, Charlie is.
Charlie's not coming.
Nope,
He's supposed
Charlie's
to be
here.
on Zoom.
No,
He's
there he
here.
is.
Oh,
Charlie.
there
We
he
do
is.
have one. So who was there? It was me, Eric, and Charlie. So one of you, could you make a motion
Make a motion to accept the minutes.
of August,
Yeah.
what is
Will
it?
be
August 10th,
August 10th,
2022.
2022.
Charlie, do you second? Charlie, can you hear us? That's your second?
You're on mute, Charlie.
You're on mute, Charlie.
I second it.
Okay, thank you. All right. So of the three of us who were here, did anybody see anything to change? Charlie, do you have any changes?
I have no changes.
Did you see anything? All right.
No suggested changes.
Okay. So it's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of August 10th, 2022. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And then each
Aye.
2 abstentions. I've lost my agenda already.
I'll make a motion to approve the warrants to the treasurer as presented upon completion of review.
And a second.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve and execute the warrants upon completion of review. Karen?
Sure. Payroll warrant dated August 26, 2022, in the amount of $23,227.21.
And we still have pool on here. How much longer?
The pool will close on Saturday.
So we'll have one more warrant. with
One
pool.
more warrant
Yeah.
with pool, lifeguards.
Okay.
Accounts payable dated August 13 through August 26, 2022, in the amount of $135,598.33. On this warrant, there are 2 loan payments. One is for the exhaust system at the fire station, and then the other one is for 2021 Western Star. And then the others are
So-
normal.
One of those is to Peoples and the other is,
They're both to people.
so that 58 is two different payments.
That is correct.
Okay.
So the exhaust system was $21,542.40. And the 2021 Western Star, $36,677.57. And that is with interest as well.
And just out of curiosity, because it's Peoples, are you fully prepared for the transition to M&T?
I wouldn't say fully prepared.
Okay.
We tried to-
But you will be when that,
Yeah, we tried to log on to the new portal, but
I don't think it opens until, the
Uh,
transition happens supposedly on September 2nd.
no, they sent us emails and passwords to try to get on there, but there's something going on.
Okay.
So we will do, Josh.
Yeah,
We have
just-
new fobs for the online banking,
okay,
so,
sounds good.
yeah, we're on top of that.
Thank you.
Putney Community Cares, is that,
Oh, those are appropriations.
that's the floor?
So the in-town appropriations, we paid out on this warrant.
Okay,
So Putney Cares, Putney Food Shop, and Putney Community Center
okay.
were paid on this warrant.
And those are this year, those are 22-23 payments.
That's correct, this fiscal year
Yeah.
in 2023.
Is this the full amount, or is this say?
No.
That's
That's
full
full
amount.
amount, okay.
Yeah,
All right. There was another one here that I was looking at. Oh, no. Oh, identification source? It's not a lot of money, just don't think I've seen that one before.
161, let me see, those are dog license
Oh,
tags.
There you go.
okay. Anybody else have any questions on the warrants? Okay, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, next is public comment on items not on the agenda. Is there a public comment in the room? Is there public comment online? Does the select board have anything they want to say? All right, moving on to the town manager's report.
So tax payments were due on August 19th. Outstanding to date is $133,340.77, which I think we did excellent.
So that's outstanding, that's the
That's for-
total previous,
That's for the first payment that was due on August 19th. That's for this fiscal year.
This year, okay, so it's not about anything that might be in arrears.
No, so what's in arrears delinquent is $98,160.57.
creeping down.
Pardon?
Creeping down.
It is, a little bit. So, I mean, we're still chasing a couple that are big, because if they continue to get behind a second year, it's gonna be bigger. But, overall, I think we did good for the first payment. Seeing as, I think it was the beginning of last week, we were at almost 600,000 we needed to collect. So, it came in,
That's good.
yes. Today I met with Wyndham Regional Transportation Planner Colin Bratton and Megan Bronco-Butrans and Charlie Robichuk at Alice Holloway and Carol Brown Way. So basically we looked for the low hanging fruit, Eileen. So, in a nutshell, signage.
Yeah,
So Route 5 and the I-91 north-south corridors. Carroll Brown Way, because it's one way coming in off of Route 5, and it goes straight out. So it was recommended that we put a yellow center line, so we can determine the travel way on both sides. And then Alice Holloway would yield to traffic on Carroll Brown, whether they're going to the co-op or if they're going left to Old Route 5. We can paint lanes and parking spaces. And then when we come to the intersection of Carroll Brown from Alice Holloway, we can do some hash marks, so they know that this is a no parking area. And so it kind of confines them to a travel way on Alice Holloway. Now, not knowing what's going to happen with the housing project, whether it'll move forward or not, we didn't really talk about a center line on Alice Holloway, because that'll get developed, because there's going to be a sidewalk if the project moves
Right,
forward.
right.
And then on the other side, there's going to be a section of sidewalk for the parking lot, and there's going to be a crosswalk. So putting a center line down there now might defeat the purpose of the design that's on paper right now.
and the signage would go roughly near the bus station, would that be the idea?
Yeah, so right at the corner of Alice Holloway and Carroll Brown, so if you're coming down off of Old Route 5, there would be a Route 5 sign with I-91. So when you follow Alice Holloway and you get to Route 5, there is a 91
Right.
south and a 91 north.
Right.
So those two are taken care of. And if you just look, you can see them. And then as far as signage coming from Carroll Brown past the co-op, going west, we put another Route 5 sign in I-91,
With an arrow.
having people go down Alice Holloway.
Yeah.
Right,
So,
that would be the most.
yes.
I think where we run into the most trouble, well, one, we probably could use a one-way only sign right across from the co-op exit if that isn't already there. I would sort of assume it is. but-
There is right where the parking is in front of the co-op, and it's right, you can't put it any further back towards Route 5, because by that time, people are going to be committed. So I looked at that today.
Well, there's the wrong way or no
There's a
entry.
Do
or
not
whatever.
enter, right.
No, but if you're coming out of the parking, anyway, I can talk to you, but if you're coming out of the co-op parking lot, there should be a one-way sign pointing towards Old Route 5.
Right.
And then by the bus station, there should be
Another one,
signage
right.
saying Route 5.
This
Yeah.
way, yeah.
It should say
Right.
Route 5 north and south going. I don't think we should direct anybody onto Old Route 5.
No,
No.
no.
Yeah.
So I mean,
That's
right
what
now,
I'm
there's
saying.
an old, very old Route 5 sign, but it just says Route 5, and it implies that Route 5 is Old
In
Route
front of
5.
you, yeah, exactly.
Right. So that's where we would put. you know,
91 north, 91
Yes.
south, 5 north,
Yes.
5 south.
And coming out of the co-op, there is a sign that has an arrow going towards Route 5, and it's got the red circle with the line through it.
Mhm.
It tells you not to go that way.
Okay.
And there's a Route 5 sign with an arrow that heads, up Carroll Brown.
But again,
Right, yes.
but implying that you go straight that way, so we
Right.
want to
Yeah.
direct people
Yeah.
to.
Make it very obvious that it's this way, not that way.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna work with the state, because,
They can fund some of that anyway.
no, they're not. It's a town road, so the town has to.
Even for the,
Yeah,
even
for
for
the
91
91
signs and
signs.
everything?
I argued with Megan today, and
No
she was
kidding.
not
Wow.
gonna budge on it. It's a town
Can we
road.
even get 91 signs?
Well, that's what I asked her. I said, how do we get them then? Who do I ask? She goes, well,
Find out.
yeah, she's gonna find out. The other thing too is,
I know where there's a couple on the
yeah,
exit ramp.
I mean, our Route 5 signs are old, and I don't even know if they're in compliance. I don't think they are, because they don't have the reflective
Yeah.
stuff
Yeah.
on it. I'm like, all right, well, we need 2 of those signs too.
Yeah.
I'm like, you kind of have to work with me, because I don't know where to get these signs from. I can get town signs, but I don't know where to get state signs. So she's gonna work with us.
Okay.
I'm gonna meet with Colin again, because we wanna go further with the discussion about Old Route 5. Because remember, we did talk
Yeah,
about,
stop signs,
right,
And speed limits too, right?
yeah,
and most of the traffic from Carroll Brown goes to Old Route 5
right,
and goes right.
yeah.
So we're gonna come up with some sort of solution.
I mean, the other sign that should be there for that, I would think, would be a local traffic only sign, which we sort of would get that, but
I mean, yeah, but
maybe
how-
that's
How local do
overkill.
you have to be?
Well, exactly, it might be sort of pointless, but,
Well, today, 4 of us were out there, and this car from New Jersey, right, starts heading down Alice Hollow, and I'm watching, right? And next thing you know, he does a U-turn, right?
Right.
Waiting for this other car to turn, left on Carroll Brown. And next thing you know, the person's like, I can't go out that way, can I? I'm like, no, it's one way. He said, loop around and go back down.
and it's
So-
not surprising, I mean, it's
Right.
not obvious, if you,
No,
you know,
not
if you
obvious.
live here, it's
Yeah.
obvious, but if
Right.
you don't,
Yeah.
it's not much signage.
So as far as the circle right there at the triangle, Colin and Megan both agreed if we have, center line markings
Yeah,
and parking designated, and painted, it will lay out the travel lane on Carroll Brown Way.
yeah,
So I'm gonna talk to Brian.
we would subcontract that, wouldn't we? I mean, Brian would probably organize it, but don't we, it doesn't matter.
Brian will paint like
They will.
parking and crosswalks. And so over there, you can do the parking. I don't know about the center line though.
Yeah.
I don't think we have the equipment, but towns have equipment like that. They let other towns borrow. So,
We,
depending on his schedule, Josh, I don't know.
we might want to think about, and I don't know whether you talked about this, a crosswalk
Yes,
from the co-op side to the farm. I mean, essentially an extension of, where you park if you're going into the handicap parking. There's a little stretch of sidewalk there, basically going, I mean, because people just cross everywhere. And if there were a crosswalk, people might use it.
be nice to have a crosswalk on that side, so you have one on each side.
You could, yeah,
And with the housing project, there's gonna be a partial sidewalk.
depending on where that sidewalk,
So,
yeah,
it's not gonna come all the way up and around,
right.
but,
Well, we can put the crosswalk there because it's not
Because it's
state.
not state,
Right.
exactly.
right, yeah. It's a crosswalk to nowhere, but it'll be okay.
But that's,
But that's
I
not.
think for us,
I guess
that's okay.
right?
We
Is
might,
that true? Because, didn't we want to put one, this was an issue with the one on West.
Kimball
Middle
Hill?
Street, Kimball Hill.
Up in front of Community Cares,
Yeah.
Oh,
and the grammar school
that's true.
wants a crosswalk on Hickory Ridge.
Yeah.
to get
right,
to the
You
but
did
it may
right.
not be, yeah, that's a good question, I don't know, yeah, no, and
I know it came up,
with
and I
the grammar
assumed it was
school,
a-
we did talk about that, I know it's the
Yeah.
case on Route 5, but I don't know for
Right.
village roads whether
So,
that's an issue or
I
not.
keep getting shot down because there's not a sidewalk.
It might be a liability issue for us more than I don't know, statutory
kind of
issue.
statutory thing.
I don't know.
Okay.
But
Well,
So
so looking
anyway.
into, because crosswalks are.
would be nice.
Would be nice,
Right.
yeah.
I mean, the other question for us as far as on local roads is concerned is what constitutes something that you're going to? I mean, can we put,
Right.
can we put 4 square feet of blacktop over there
Just for a spot, yeah,
somewhere to go?
yeah,
Does that count? Because that, at the grammar school, that could certainly be done.
yeah. And people do walk to Putney Cares to, attend classes and things like that, so they do have to cross over the roads.
Yes.
The other crosswalk too is at Landmark College going to Vinegar Lane, because
Oh, yeah.
technically that is sidewalk.
From across River Road.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that has, we have a sidewalk on this side. Do they have a sidewalk on the Landmark College
Yes,
side?
they do.
They do.
So we
Yeah.
could,
Yes.
one would think we could put a crosswalk there.
Yeah. Get the guys on that one too. I think it was in the plan too, Josh,
I would assume so. I don't remember.
so. I also met with Lisa Papazian and we discussed the feasibility study from 2005 for the renovations of Town Hall. We both agreed we would ask Greenberg Associates what it would cost to update the figures in that feasibility study. So we're waiting.
And what was it then? It was like 560 or something?
I don't recall about that, yeah.
I would think some things have changed since then too, because not just cost, but like wireless access as opposed to, physical wires, things like that, this kind of thing. Heating technology, heat pumps, I don't know.
Yeah, we're not
That's a long
gonna
time
dive
ago.
into that,
Yes.
because
Yeah.
that's gonna take a while to, all I can say is, we like that plan from 2005, that layout.
Uh-huh,
So,
I never saw
for
that.
the downstairs,
Okay,
I don't think we would change much. We talked about changing the kitchen and maybe putting it up against the bathroom because it made more sense, but it would limit the meeting room.
oh, I see.
Yeah,
You stole from the Lister's office.
right. So anyways, it's
Okay,
moving forward. So if we can get a number to see what renovations would cost, and then we're gonna have to do some fundraising and get some grants.
yeah, actually, that is out of date, because the Lister's office is now where that, anyway. We're pointing off screen to a schematic of the town hall.
Yeah. Well, and we would change some office spaces too, because, there's no zoning office, and, someday there might be a need for a zoning office.
So if you just do, the typical adder for that kind of thing is 4% per year. And I just did that based on that time elapsed, 1,134,450. So, but that doesn't include the additional increase in costs over the last couple of years, which
Right.
have been greater than 4%. So I think that's probably
Is that anything we can get
that
grant
would
money
be
for?
sort of a starting point, yes.
Yes. And we're gonna have to tap into as much as we can.
Right,
That's unfortunate, we're putting this away all these years. Putting a little bit
like a
in.
reserve fund?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, as you know, I think for a number of years, we put 25,000 a year into, we've actually done some of the stuff. I would be in favor of reviewing what we're looking at as far as scope is concerned, before we necessarily start spending money on getting an update on it. But just
We're not
because some of
spending
those,
any money, we're just asking for a price to update it.
and that will,
Yeah,
think
don't
that
worry,
will-
we're not spending any
Okay.
money.
Well, I'm not sure that's something he can do without charging us for it, so.
All I'm asking for is a price to update the numbers.
Oh, a price to update,
Yeah,
I see what you're saying, right, yeah, Yeah.
I'm not gonna invest in or commit to any
yeah.
until we're all on board. And that includes the Historical Society as well.
Yeah. No, there's a number of things that we've done since that was done that have enhanced the space in here, you can't really tell. But insulating and upgrades
Right,
in electrical, concrete in the basement, and so on and so forth, that we
Yeah.
chipped away at for, we did 25,000 a year for quite some time.
Okay.
But
I
it
didn't know that, so
wouldn't
it's
probably
good
be
to know.
reflected in how he would look at it, I would think, so.
All right, well, that's good to
Can
know.
someone just tell me what is now the Lister's space? What is that gonna be in this new schematic here? In that corner, this corner?
Looks like they're moving the kitchen area to take up what, it's like half of the Lister space, and then reconfiguring, I think, the meeting room,
Right,
so that back half, that way, wouldn't exist anymore, I think,
right, this would still be like the meeting space?
yeah. And they're taking away a little bit of the bathroom, or not?
Yes.
Because the elevator.
The
Is the
elevator.
elevator, yeah.
Yeah. And that bathroom's way too big anyway.
It doesn't
It's pretty
need
big.
to be.
It's very luxurious.
Without the luxury.
Yeah, exactly, in a country sort of way.
And then it's got a toilet, and that's about it.
Okay.
So time was spent on that back in 2005.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
No, it's a valuable starting point,
Yes,
definitely, but
yes.
I'm just not sure how things
yeah.
might have evolved since then as
Yeah.
far as how we use the space and what the goals might be.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the complaint that was filed in our last meeting regarding property on Kimmel Hill, I was supposed to meet with the property owner, but, he never made it to Vermont, so. And he left me a message on Friday, his contractor was over at that building. And he was gonna be there at 4:30, and if I wanted to go over and meet with them, I could. Well, Friday was tax collection, and at 4:30 in the afternoon, I wasn't gonna go talk to the contractor. So I will follow up with Neil to see what the plan is, and, go from there.
Okay.
But anyways, we all know,
Public information,
right.
it's an ongoing discussion.
Yeah. I'll also bring up the sidewalk and see what we can do to,
Get that.
yeah, try to get
Be
him
nice to get that
moving
done.
along.
And we agreed to split it 50/50, I think.
Yes.
That's essentially what it
Yes.
was, wasn't it?
Yeah, I have all that information in the file
Yeah,
with that contractor's name too.
yeah.
So, does this board want me, I'm gonna call the property owner and see what's happening, maybe he'll give me a report. I don't feel like I need to be involved with what's going on over there. But, and perhaps this is something for the health officer to be involved in.
I mean, I think we all want to see progress being made.
Right.
I'm not sure where that lands.
I think the sidewalk certainly would fall under our purview,
Okay.
to be able to, try and make that move forward. Beyond that, unless it's a health issue that needs to be addressed, it's an aesthetic issue, which I really don't think we have jurisdiction over, but whatever we can do to encourage
Okay.
a change would be great, but it's not our.
Right.
I mean, the only place that you would fit into that would be zoning. If there's a change of use or
Right.
something like that, then that would be one thing. But other than that, it's not. It's really.
Okay.
Or, yeah, if there's a health
Exactly.
issue, it would fall under the health officer. I
Which I'm
assume.
not aware of, but
I mean,
there might be.
the
The door
the
was
door-
a problem.
was a problem, so there could have been problems inside of.
Rodents could be a
Yeah.
problem. But,
Yeah.
all right.
So can someone explain to me how towns manage the aesthetic issue? Like, clearly different towns have different zoning, right? They must.
Yes.
So what are some of the variations on zoning that one could have that would deal with aesthetics? Like, all I know is kind of, we've got nothing, and, Grafton
Has everything.
has everything. There must be some variations on a theme.
Well, so depending on the town, like Westminster, Grafton, so I can tell you Westminster has a historic overlay
Exactly.
in their village, which any changes, like a door, window, roof line, anything, additions,
Have
has
to
to
be
go
approved.
through zoning and zoning review board. We don't have that here in Putney.
So is there anything else other than a historic overlay, which I don't completely understand what that means, but are there other ways to approach the issue
I guess,
other than
I
historic?
guess the blight ordinance would do
An
something.
ordinance would, yes.
It'd
I
be
mean,
hard
we
to
could-
define what a blight is in that context, though.
Blight might be a strong, I mean, it's appropriate for some things, but
Yeah.
it might be a strong term. You know, towns, I mean, Chester, you know, all, towns do all sorts of different things. So you
Yes.
can do it through an ordinance, but what gives it, you know, the historical district is definitely something, you know who would be the person to talk about it probably would be Lisa. And we could, we could
Yeah.
ask her about that. But, you know, Grafton being the extreme example,
Right.
you know, which is lovely, but it feels a little,
Right, I
Um,
would just love to know kind of what's
what the
this
possibility is.
continuum? What is the continuum, you know, between having nothing and having, you know, everybody paints their houses green and white, you know? What are our options?
Ordinances, I think,
Yeah, right.
is the main answer, and those with the backing of historic, which we have, I mean, we have a
It's already
historic
a designated. it's already
designation,
historic,
but I
right.
don't know what,
It
know
might be a stronger,
beyond that, what
Yeah.
that
No,
means.
so the historic district for Putney only means, has nothing to do with zoning. It's a designated area where property owners can get funding
Right,
for their buildings.
but I would assume, and I'm just assuming, that we could have ordinances related to our zoning that would sort of fall under that overlay of historic, where we would say, these are the requirements that have to be met, you know, if you're gonna change windows that face Main Street. That's how many towns
Right,
do it, is that
right.
if they face Main Street, then they have jurisdiction over it. If they don't, then it just goes through the regular zoning process.
Yeah.
So there's various different ways of approaching it, but it's a good question. We should,
I'll talk to Lisa about it.
Yeah.
And see if I can get any clarity.
Take a look at the draft blight ordinance.
Yeah.
Because blight too can be like, a piece of property in which say they have like all these like refrigerators and washer and dryers, right?
can be a sort of a
Yeah.
gunk ordinance.
Yeah. So, you know, that can be considered blight too, because, you know, it may bring down the value of the neighbor's property, you know?
Right.
So, yeah, so it means a lot of different things. But it's on the list,
it is on the list.
yes. Let's see, so I attended the Putney Food Shelf Open House on 8/11, and I sent you the numbers that they're providing service to.
Yeah.
So I was surprised, and they're doing a really good job, and, you know, so any support from the community is, you know, they would appreciate it. But the numbers are just astronomical,
Yeah.
you know, and you saw the graph, it was just like, and it's going back up. So the amount of services that they're providing is increasing.
Yeah, not surprisingly, you know, different reason.
Right.
It was pandemic related.
Right.
Now it's inflation related, or
Yes.
post-pandemic,
Yeah.
but
Right.
inflation related.
Recession,
Yeah.
inflation. Oil and propane proposal bids are due on September 2nd. We'll see how many we get back. The grant writer management request for proposal is due back on September 1st. The auditor is scheduled for September 6th and 7th. And I have a request, out of the norm. Just like, okay. Fresh Film Productions sent me an email. So they want to do a film shoot campaign with a food brand named Knorr, Knorr. Okay.
Yeah.
So apparently, the director of Fresh Film lives here in Putney, and they think it would be a perfect location for the campaign. So basically, what they need to do, they're supposedly renting a truck to salt the roads of a small town that gets hit hard with snow in the winter. There would also be a one-day event where Knorr will be cooking stew with their new bullion to share with our community. So,
A new income stream, or do we just need to hire
No,
a
this is
location?
gonna put us on the
Someone
map.
who's gonna be
Come
a
on.
location scout, and like.
yeah,
If
so,
we get free soup out of it, it's fine.
it'll be in the wintertime, and
I didn't understand the first part. They're going to salt the roads.
no, but see, what they're gonna do is, they're gonna follow one of our trucks, basically, with,
Oh,
camera. And, yeah.
so we should hope for a snowy winter?
Well, and I don't know how they're gonna do that with, the timing and everything, so, I've asked a few more questions and I'm waiting for a response, but
Okay.
I'm leaving this with the board. You can make a
And
decision
so
on this.
what is the
I mean, is there
request? Would we
They wanna know if we'd be willing to do
to allow
this.
them to do that?
Yes.
I mean, can we stop them? It doesn't
Yeah, I
sound like.
wouldn't
I mean,
think
that's
so,
a-
but,
Oh, no, they're
Yeah, might
asking if
involve
they
some
can do it here.
cooperation.
yeah,
I mean,
You
I
know?
don't, yeah, I'm not against it.
Yeah, I mean,
or make some good soups and bouillon.
So now they don't have to do a campaign. There's a
Yeah.
free commercial.
Really, exactly, and the select board.
I wonder
Endorsed.
what the, I don't know, I'm just curious what how following a salt truck
Oh, I
plays
think,
into Nor.
I can imagine, it's their image, they want
Right.
like a winter scene,
Right,
you
yeah.
know, and that's gonna set it
The
up by
stew,
following
right.
the plow
Yeah.
down a country road, you
Yeah.
know, yeah.
because it's not Morton salt, so.
Yeah, exactly, that's sort of what I was thinking.
Are they selling salt?
So anyways, yeah, when I received this, I'm like, oh, what do I do with this? I'm like, okay. So I just wanted to present it to the board.
Okay.
I'll get some more details, but who knows?
I mean, as
That's
long as they're not
interesting.
planning, as long as they don't want to like rent a town truck, I don't see, I mean.
No, they had questions like, they want to know if we'd be interested in participating. So,
Interesting.
if there's any cost on our end, does the town normally handle distribution of salt on the roads, or do we, contract it out? Questions like that. So, yeah, I just gotta find the right driver.
And who is the local person that's,
I don't know the name of
You
that
don't.
person yet.
it'd be interesting to talk to them and just find
Yes.
out
Yes.
A little bit more of the.
sort of how it fits together.
Seems fairly benign.
Yeah.
I think they have to show a sign that says Putney though, that's our,
Yeah.
we require that we get our,
A little
Yeah.
product
Yes.
placement, our town placement.
Yeah.
welcome to Putney
Yeah.
shop.
Exactly. Yeah, actually, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
So one other item, so I don't know if this board is aware, Peg, you must know, but John McLaren has retired from Landmark College.
Oh.
So they do have a new vice president for administration and finance, and his name is David LaValle. So I just wanted to let the board know about that.
And I didn't know until today that they bought
Yes,
the house.
Yes.
Across on
Across,
Warrants?
yeah,
Oh.
I just didn't realize that until a faculty meeting today. I missed that.
yeah. There is a housing shortage, as we all know, and, our our schools who need workforce
Right.
and our mill, they can't employ anyone because there's no housing.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's a problem.
Yep.
I don't know if this board has watched the meeting from the Affordable Housing Committee.
I saw it today.
They had
No,
a
but I've
speaker.
heard people referencing it, I haven't seen it.
I believe it's on our website now, but people should watch that. It was very informative.
Yeah, it was, yeah. It was, what was the rep's name? I didn't catch it when
Tom, I can't remember.
he represents, shit, yeah.
Chittenden, yeah.
It's okay.
Is it Chittenden Regional?
And he's a
Commission?
state rep, or who is?
I didn't catch all of that.
Right.
I mean, he was very informative, but I didn't
Yeah.
catch his name or where he was representing, who he was representing.
He knows Mike's, Maricki's.
Yes.
It must be.
He's on, I guess he's on the, what do they call him, the committee for housing in Vermont, so
Yeah.
he had a lot of knowledge.
You certainly did. All right, that wraps up my report. Sorry it took so long.
It's okay. So, does the select board have anything about the town report that we haven't already discussed? Is there any public comment online about the town manager's report? Can you take the chat down, because I don't think I'm seeing everybody.
All right. Let me see.
I'm assuming if somebody raised their hands or wanted to say something, they would show up in the top. Oops, now it's really big.
Is it
Just
really?
chat, just, you closed,
Just close the
you
chat.
closed the participants and
Ah,
left chat.
sorry,
Back
Karen.
But now we can't, now
Is
you got
that
to highlight
everybody?
participants. Or bring participants back.
You
There.
folks,
There you go.
Okay, thank
you
you.
folks are being difficult
I
today.
Demanding.
Just that day.
All right.
So there's, does not appear that anybody in the public has anything to say about the town manager's report. So, moving on to boards, committees, and commissions discussion action. We don't have anything under that.
Good.
So the next piece is the select board items, new business, which is the Vermont Council on Rural Development overview, which is Brian Lowe, who is here.
And he has an associate with him today, too.
Okay, cool. Hi,
Hello, how are you folks?
we're good.
All right.
Apparently we're troublemakers today.
Difficult.
Difficult.
Well, it's very nice to see you folks, and thank you for accommodating us on Zoom. I know we hope to be there in person tonight, so it's good to see you virtually. Would it be helpful for me to jump right into our kind of our topic?
Yeah, why don't you lead it?
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you. So Brian Lowe from the Vermont Council on Rural Development, joined by Hannah Carpino on our team as well. We decided in advance that I'll do most of the talking tonight since we're on Zoom to keep it straightforward. But both of us are happy to answer questions if you have them. And really, three things we're hoping to accomplish tonight. First is thank you. We have a letter from the select board inviting us to Putney this fall, where we're going to run a process, and we're eager to do that. Second, my plan is to lay out a little bit about our organization, kind of reintroduce us to you. And third and finally, give a quick and succinct overview of the process that would take place this fall and answer any questions that you have. I'm happy to do that if it makes sense, and I want to make sure that it's what you're expecting, hoping to cover tonight.
I think so.
Great. Okay, so the Vermont Council on Rural Development, we are an independent, nonpartisan organization, and we only work where we're invited. So we won't come to a town without an invitation from the select board. We don't work for the select board, but we will not come without an invitation and want to work closely in a complementary way. The organization itself is actually authorized in the Federal Farm Bill, has a board of directors that includes officials from local, state, federal offices, the private sector, and nonprofits. And the fundamental purpose of the organization is to see what communities identify as their needs and priorities and help connect to resources to realize projects that reflect those needs and priorities. And so it's a very action-oriented process. The organization itself has been around for about 30 years and worked in 85 communities in Vermont, so a good amount of time in a large number of communities. 85 communities over 30 years means that it's a fairly deliberative and thorough process, 3 or 4 communities a year. And the end result is 2 or 3 locally identified priorities for specific projects that we help build kind of a resident task force around and help connect to resources to make those projects a reality. And community is different, and so we've seen a community center built in Cambridge, housing in St. Johnsbury, downtown investment in Johnson, new childcare center in Craftsbury. I mean, different goals and priorities in each community, but a similar process that we run as a kind of neutral facilitator, helping identify what those ideas could be and helping make them into significant projects. The other thing I want to emphasize about our organization at the outset is that this process isn't meant to be a process to identify what the select board should do or what the planning commission should do. It's about creating task forces of volunteers that take on leadership roles in a community in a way that complements the work that's already underway from a select board or planning commission perspective. That's a pretty brief overview of us as an organization. And before I shift into kind of what the process could look like in Putney, I want to pause and see if you have any questions.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Sounds good. So the process that we follow is effectively 4 steps. And so I'll outline each of those in turn here. After we're invited into a community, we always check in with the town manager, or the town administrator, and the select board, and some other members of the planning commission or leaders in local businesses, faith, or community groups to get a sense of people in the community who are deeply invested in Putney, who have either deep roots or are newer but bring good energy and different perspectives to a community. We build a steering committee of between 10 and 15 people who have a range of ages, experiences, and perspectives on Putney. That steering committee meets one time, and its fundamental goal is to identify what are the 4 areas of interest in Putney. What are kind of people interested in? What are issues that matter from the Putney perspective? And so, to make that less abstract, we would ask that group effectively in the course of a meeting to identify what are the things that people are talking about in the community that will become the forums for community discussion in subsequent meetings. And so it would be things like, not like pothole on Main Street, for example, but infrastructure and roads, those kind of broader categories that could be those forums where people from the community can subsequently come and engage. And so in the Putney context, we would be doing this work prior to a one-time meeting of that steering committee in early October to identify those 4 issue areas that people would want to talk about in Putney. And the theory behind this is, we don't know Putney like you do. And so we rely on this kind of range of perspectives and opinions in the form of a steering committee to identify the right broad topics for discussion across Putney. The second part of our process is a major community visit meeting. We call this step 1. It's the first kind of large, open, public discussion. These are great meetings, and I'm happy to report, just kind of coming out of a year or 2 years of kind of a pandemic, we've seen a significant uptick in people participating, people of all ages participating in these events, which is really exciting. And so about a month after the steering committee meets, we hold a major community visit meeting, and the purpose of this meeting is to gather input and ideas across those 4 issue areas. What are the opportunities people see? What are the challenges related to those issues? And what are their ideas for action, right? And so this big event includes a major community dinner, which can be a really wonderful event. Different communities structure this community dinner different ways, but it's a way to bring people from different generations and different backgrounds and different interests together kind of in one space to share their thoughts about the community over the course of kind of late afternoon and early evening discussion even. So that would be in early November, so a month after the kind of October steering committee discussion. And then there's a third part of this, a kind of community meeting in early December, where we take the dozens or sometimes hundreds of ideas that we get from that community visit discussion across those 4 different issue areas. We distill them down to usually about 20 or 25 different topics that recur across those forums. There's often a pattern of interest and priority from people in a community. So we distill those down, come back to Putney with those different priorities, put them against a wall, so you can kind of see what those different issues are that you and your neighbors and fellows kind of identify, and then we vote. We bring the 20, call it, or 25 different issue areas down to 8, and then down to 2 or 3 on that kind of second major community meeting night. The third and final step of this process is in early January in Putney. We would bring a resource team with us, folks who are experts across the state in the areas that you have identified as the 2 or 3 projects that you want to pursue as a community. These are folks who have funding, who have technical expertise, or who have done something similar in a community nearby that we've worked with in the past. We bring that group together along with those people who are coming out of this process who are willing to work on that project, and we create a task force around that project or that priority, where we help identify a chair, and then we have on our team some grant writing expertise and a lot of different connections where we help that task force over time advance its work. This volunteer task force advance its work. So that's a kind of the process from a steering committee to a major community engagement to a vote and to building task forces around these kind of 2 or 3 concrete priorities. We produce a final report as well, and at that point we step back as an organization a little bit and have the folks on our team who are more kind of grant writers stay in touch with those task forces to see what it is that they need to help make that project a reality, help make those connections, and help produce whatever it is that you decide. It's a little funny to describe up front that I do not know what folks at Putney will ultimately decide to focus on. But it could be anything from like a child care center to a community center, to wastewater, to an events task force. We've seen a lot of different ideas over time across these different communities. Let me pause there and see what kind of questions you have. A couple other things on my end, but I'll pause now to see if there's questions on the organization or the process, or how we will be working in Putney.
I have a question,
All right.
and I know this has kind of come to you from some other folks, but I just wonder if you could speak to us about it, is the whole idea of kind of how this dovetails with our ARPA committee and our process. You know, I understand there's completely different processes, but here we have a big effort going in the town to identify needs, identify ideas, you know, like there's some parallel things going on here, as well as, you know, ARPA money as one of the potential funding sources for ideas that emerge. So I just wonder how you see those two, you know, dovetailing, if you do.
No, it's a great question, and honestly, it's a question that we've gotten in communities that we're working in right now, because in a way, it's actually a really timely moment to run a process like this. And we've actually spoken, not me directly, but a member of our team met with, I think it's Phil, who's the planning commission chair in Putney,
Yeah.
to kind of walk through this question together as well. What we've seen is that this is usually a helpful complementary process. It produces 2 or 3 kind of clear and actionable priorities that can inform some of those ARPA decisions. We want to be careful that this process isn't, you know, the authority when it comes to how ARPA funds are spent. That's something that's the town's choice and responsibility. But other communities have found it to be useful to see a broad public engagement effort distilling those 2 or 3 different action-focused priorities in a community. In Concord, for example, in Essex County, one of the things that's come out of that process is a real emphasis on this Miles Pond Beach, this kind of community beach that needs some infrastructure investment. And I think it's been interesting to see how the Selectboard in that town has been able to see like real broad interest in that beyond maybe what they would have expected, and that, you know, makes it potentially a viable ARPA investment for that community. And again, every community is different, but this is meant to be a complementary process that helps identify priorities that may or may not be where you would want to put ARPA funds.
Yeah, I have a couple questions. First, simple one. I felt like I had a pretty good sense of the time sequence you were referring to as you were laying it out, but then I lost. So when would you be mostly like that stage of you presenting us with a sort of final document and you separating out a little bit? When are we talking about? When would that be approximately?
You would get a final report from us in late January or early February.
Okay,
The way the process would unfold, this kind of steering committee that helps prepare the groundwork for what are the public forums we should be talking about would be October. The major community visit meeting would be November, probably early November. Early December would be the community vote on what, of the 20 different potential priorities outlined, what are the top 2 or 3 from the community's perspective. And then that final meeting in January is really about matching those priorities with resources from across the state. And we produce a final report after that date. So you as a community would know what those 2 or 3 priorities are in November. The final report will come to you. You would know in December what those 2 or 3 priorities are. The final report will come to you after we created those task forces in January.
thank you. That's just help from
Yeah.
a town
So-
meeting
Yeah, I was
standpoint.
just
Right.
thinking about
It's,
that, yeah.
and how that
If
might
there's-
intersect with ARPA, again, I don't know.
Right.
Then the other question I had, this is probably, I'm sure it's different for every town, but what is the ultimate relationship between how this unfolds and the role of the select board?
Great. So I didn't mean to cut you off if you have other.
No, that's fine, just, yep,
We see it as complementary. What we do, and it's a little bit into the details here, but I think it's important with respect to your question. In that kind of second major community meeting, when we're voting on what are the proper priorities from the community's perspective, what are the priorities they'd like to see, we always are asking and engaging with a representative, ideally from the select board, to say, is this already happening? Is this happening in the community? Are there things here that are already underway? And kind of constantly asking that question in public in that meeting to make sure that as people are voting, they're well aware of, would this be redundant or would this not be redundant? And that's how we help kind of keep our work complementary and not redundant to work that's already underway within that community. It does require broad-based engagement for that to be effective, and that's really where we spend the bulk of our time, is making sure people know about this process and are willing to kind of give some time to engage and think about the future of their community.
Whoever.
Whichever one. Karen, why don't you go first?
Okay, so Brian, can you explain the relationship of the steering committee and who we should be looking at for those 15 to 20 people and the work task forces? How? Because what I don't want people to think is, because if they weren't chosen for the steering committee, they can still be engaged in the entire process on a work task in a group for a certain subject.
Okay.
That's a great question. I think maybe if I were to step back briefly, one thing I should explain is that part of what we want to bring to the community is additional capacity to do all the outreach engagement for this process. It should not fall on the town manager or on the select board to do any of the outreach and engagement for this process. That's a big part of what we're trying to do. And so we would do all the work to build that steering committee and then do the outreach for those meetings. There are 2 exceptions that I want to come back to about where we do as a town to do something specific. So I will come back to those. But when it comes to outreach and engagement, that's the bulk of our time, our work. So we would do all the outreach and we would build that steering committee of 15 to 20 people. We always start with names recommended by the town manager, by a member of the select board or planning commission, but we continue out from there to gain as many different names as we can, and then we begin trying to build that steering committee thinking about age, different perspectives, so we can kind of bring together for one time meeting. That's not a highly publicly advertised meeting, although we're certainly transparent about what we're doing. That second meeting after the steering committee meeting, that's where we're trying to bring as many people into the process as we possibly can. And those task forces are not built until the end of that process. So there's a kind of broad, if you think of it as a funnel, there's as many people as possible engaged at the front, and people are self-selecting into task forces at the end. What's exciting about it is it often brings new people into kind of community engagement and supporting different kind of community initiatives.
Thank you.
Yeah, my question was just really sort of dovetails right onto that or follows it. at the broader community meeting, has it ever happened in the past that some of the task force areas that have been developed by the steering committee get varied or changed or increased, or in that broader forum? What happens sometimes?
Great question. Let me explain the part of this again in a different way, because I think it's a great question, and I think the issue is mine and how I'm explaining it. The steering committee's goal is to create forums for conversation that reflect things of interest in Putney. So these are very broad issues, and it can be different things in different communities, right? I'm going to give some examples, but I'm not projecting. I don't know what they will be in Putney, but it could be things like, roads and infrastructure for one forum area. Another could be outdoor recreation. The community meeting about outdoor recreation in that forum might lead to ideas about new trails, new connections across potential bike lanes, could lead to all these different ideas and concepts. Those ideas and concepts then become projects. So you go from a kind of broad issue area to a specific project. And I think what's really important to be upfront about with this process, this is not a broad visioning process. This is a process about identifying kind of clear and actionable priorities for a community to take. So you would go from something like, that community connection forum to maybe a desire for a child care center, to building a task force around how do you actually construct that new child care center, and how do we help you connect different resources to make that possible. Does that answer the question? That the steering committee
Yes.
wouldn't really be connected to those task forces. It's a group that meets just one time to help orient the process to issues of interest in Putney.
So, the people you're looking for on the steering committee are people who are most likely to be able to create and identify what the broad topics of interest are, issue areas are in the community. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. But I kind of do go back to your question that was asked here on the floor, what if the steering committee doesn't identify, or do you have confidence in your experience that the steering committee is good at identifying the broad issues? The half, I don't know, 4 or 5 broad issues.
Yes, and here's why. I guess the way, it's a great question, and honestly, I think I'd be more nervous if it was the first community. It'll be the 86th, and that gives me high confidence here. Because what ends up happening is these forum topics are broad, and they're broad for a reason. Because something like economic development could encompass a whole range of different issues. And so it's a mechanism to surface different ideas in a way that's coherent and where we can find patterns within it. We also always ask, after that, kind of all those forums are done and we come to the vote, we always ask at the beginning of that meeting, what's missing? What are we missing from the different lists here as a community? And so there's multiple places for people to insert new ideas if they haven't been actively captured. So that broad base, I guess the other thing I'd say is just because those topics can be broad, oftentimes you'll see the same ideas occur in different things, even if they feel somewhat disconnected. Something can pop up in infrastructure, something can pop up in economic development, and in community connection, different aspects of the same challenge.
Laura, you had a question?
Yes, thank you. Laura Campbell, resident of Putney, aware that there are lots of initiatives being floated and funded already privately, and I'm just wondering if you could say again how the 15 or 20 people for the steering committee are chosen.
Okay, so what we do is we start, in every community we always start with the town manager or the town administrator and the select board to begin getting names in the community of folks who are engaged in that community.
Okay.
And it spiderwebs out from there. So we often end up with just a huge range of potential names. And our job then is to try and build a committee that will come up with 4 different forums that are broad enough that different ideas can be accommodated, but also reflective of the current reality in Putney.
Thank you.
Sure. No, thank you. Good question.
A couple of questions. How does this intersect, I mean, I know they're not town meetings per se, but as far as open meeting law is concerned, I mean, they wouldn't be subject to open meeting law presumably, but do you encounter trouble where people feel like they're being excluded? Is that a concern, and if so, how do you manage it?
Great question. So the goal we have, we often say this is, we want everyone to hear about these meetings at least 5 different ways. We want it to be, we're going to be on the radio, we're going to try and get on local TV, we're going to work on Front Porch Forum, it's active in Putney, we're going to be on social media, we'll be doing a mailing, which I should come back to, it's something we talk about with the town. We'll be flyering in town on foot, just, as we go around. And the goal is to be as inclusive as possible, because I think that at the end of the day, the community's perception of whether or not the priorities are reflective of the experience in Putney depends upon that kind of broad and deep engagement. And that's where the bulk of our time goes as a team and as a staff, is in that outreach. We just want to make sure that outreach is oriented in a way that reflects what Putney's priorities are. And that's why we start with that initial one-time meeting of the steering.
Did you have a question?
No.
I was interested in how you, I think you just sort of said how you get people engaged, but I guess those methods have been working pretty well. How much of the community do you normally get out at the larger community, percentage-wise? The dinner, the larger meetings?
Yeah. Well, we're working in Concord right now, so that's one closest on my mind. Concord is a town of about 1,100 people, so a little smaller. We had about 100 people at the community dinner in July. The community before, Brownington, also a very small community, there were about 70, 75 people in a town of about 1,000. So with those two communities, you're looking at 10% or just under 10%. In Highgate, which was during kind of the Omicron wave in February and March, we had still about 120 people in a town of about 3,500. So you're looking at significant, from our perspective, a significant percentage, 5-10% of the community engaged. It does vary by community, but those are the last that we've worked in, and I think that's a good ballpark number from an engagement perspective. So they are quite large meetings.
Okay, and I guess the follow-up question is, do you think, or do you know if that demographic that you're attracting, is that the same demographic that would attend a town meeting, or do you think you're getting other people?
I never want to make, it's like that Yogi Berra line, like predictions are hard, especially when they're about the future. Like I don't want to make predictions about Putney because I don't know the community, but what I've been pleased by is the response in the last several communities that we've worked in where it's people that the local mayor or maybe the select board chair don't know, new people coming into the process. And that is definitely a goal of ours, to reach across the community in a number of different ways to people who may not normally be engaged, and to try and bring them into a discussion here. So it's definitely one of the priorities of our work, and again, where the balance of our time goes. I do think there's one thing I do want to make sure to mention before our time is up, which is one of the things that we always ask a community to commit to is two things. We pay for the full process and all the time. It's usually about $40,000. We find ways to cover all that. We ask the town to cover one mailing and the community dinner. And so those are things that, and it's before my time here, but those are things we have talked about with Putney in the past. And I think it's important just to flag that. The community mailing, we have templates for that and can work with the town offices on those, but also ask the select board to pay for that dinner, that one dinner at the community visit. We cover the cost of the subsequent dinners at the community meeting and that kind of final task force.
We're experts here at pulling dinners together.
I think that's also would be a good way to engage certain, landmark Putney School organizations that could participate in that in
next stage.
Exactly, a number of
Right.
different ways.
Yeah.
that-
Right.
Yeah, and I'm sure that we're not the only select board town that has had to deal with this, some people in the community having a sense they're not being included, that they're being, they're not included in the decisions that are happening. So I really want to make sure that particularly in that initial, and it sounds like you are being super conscientious about this, but I don't want, in that initial wave of, for the planning steering committee, I just really want to make sure that we're as inclusive as we can be. So,
I couldn't agree more, and I appreciate the comment.
yeah.
Sounds exciting?
Yeah,
Yes.
what a resource. I
Right.
mean, it's like, it's such a win-win, you
Yeah,
know?
no, it's definitely, community engagement is something that we struggle with.
Yeah.
And it's great to have somebody from the outside, showing us how it's done.
Well, thanks for saying that. I think we feel like we've got some of the best jobs in the state. It's really a pleasure to work in communities, and I do just, it's not for us to show you how it's done. It's more like we're eager to learn from you, and we're eager to hear what the priorities are from Putney folks, and then see if we can't make those a reality. So, we don't have an agenda. I do really want to emphasize that. And it's really a process from a neutral facilitator perspective, meant to identify priorities within Putney from the perspective of Putney residents.
Well, and as a member of the ARPA committee, I've just got to say, this is going to be so helpful.
Yes.
This is going to be super helpful. Thank you.
Yeah,
In
I imagine-
advance.
Right, and I imagine it'll be a tremendous help for the planning commission as well, because they're working on the town plan as we speak.
And that's what we heard. Yeah,
yeah.
Phil.
So it'll be, both of those things are, they're coinciding nicely. Is there any public comment or more questions online? Any more in the room? Everybody on the select board is good? Charlie, you have any?
No, this has been very informative. Got a couple of things up.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right. Well then, we don't have to take any action on anything tonight, right? We're just continue along in the process?
Correct. The board has already sent a formal letter to us. We just thought it was prudent to circle back to you before we got underway here in town.
Okay,
Great.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, look forward to it.
yeah, thanks a lot.
Same. No, thank you. We are very much looking forward to it too.
Thank you, Brian and Hannah.
All right, thank you. Okay, moving on to unfinished business, which is the Putney Fire Department pontoon boat. Karen, do you wanna?
Back on June 20th, 2022, the board signed an agreement for rescue in the Putney Fire Department to house a watercraft in the Putney Fire Station. There was a memo that went along with that as well, that was dated June 3rd, outlining where the department was going in the future by having this agreement with rescue. I know we have talked about, or it has been brought up about regional sharing of resources. And I think in the future, you're gonna see that happen. I know Mike Moricky made a comment about EMS and sharing regionally, because towns are struggling right now. So as a reminder, the agreement is in place, and it was agreed to sell a pontoon boat. It went out to bid, but it did not go out per our policy. So our policy is whenever we liquidate equipment, that it has to be put it in the newspaper, post it in 3 different places, and sealed bids come in. So at this juncture, we did have an appraisal done of the boat. And there was a conversation with Frank Underwood at Stowaway Marina, and it is of his opinion that,
We're not gonna reveal what the appraisal is,
No.
is that correct?
No.
Okay, I just wanted to, yeah.
I just wanted to let you know that, you know, in his opinion, the deck was in good condition. He walked around on the boat, and the overall condition was good for what he saw and looked at. The transom is good. To replace the boat, the pontoon boat that we had, would be about $40,000 in his opinion. And he also added that, you know, the pontoon boat is the safest and easiest boat to operate, especially for the possibility of many different people operating without major boat experience. So, given that, we did receive bids. We received 13 bids when this first went out to bid. It basically got pulled back because the process wasn't done appropriately. So my question to this board is, what is your intent at this point?
So I had a conversation with Tom last week, probably, because I wasn't clear on what the boat was, you know, what the boat was being used for, you know, what our expectations were regarding rescue capabilities and basically how the whole process works, because I don't know that much about rescue, but his response to me was that the major impetus for going into the Rescue Inc. Agreement was in a spirit of mutual aid, basically, a spirit of sharing resources across the community, and that they wanted to maintain their close relationship with Rescue Inc. And that given that it is a boat that they can put out in more places, and he explained to me they don't use the motor when they would go into the swamp. They would have to row it, but at least they'd be able to get out there in much shallower water than the one that we have right now. So it had more uses. I asked, you know, what happens if rescue goes away entirely, and he explained that there are other boats in the area. In fact, the one time that we had a rescue call, a boat rescue call in Putney, they were doing something with the boat, our boat, and it was not available for use. So they actually ended up calling, I guess, Brattleboro or somebody else for a boat. So there's already a mutual aid process in place among the towns. So my impression was that if Rescue Inc. goes away, we're not necessarily going to need to buy another boat. So I was left with the impression that this is actually a really sound agreement that I think that we should continue with.
Which we already agreed
We're
to.
already agreed to.
Yeah.
Right.
I guess we could rescind it if we felt like it.
And it's already, how long is the agreement that we
We
entered?
don't have there's no end date on here.
There isn't.
Um,
I mean, I think that,
but, yeah,
I think we can safely assume that even if Rescue Inc., as it currently exists, were to go away, there's gonna be some shared ambulance service that would still benefit from, I mean, you know, the whole system is based on mutual aid
yeah. I mean, I
regardless.
really got the
So
sense that,
sharing of responsibilities between departments is already.
Right, nobody's gonna
more.
say, well, you know, that's outside of Brattleboro, we're not gonna let you use our boat. If somebody's in
Somebody
trouble,
needs a boat,
but yeah, there's gonna be a boat.
Yeah.
So, and that's true of a lot of these pieces of equipment. So, because, you know, they're in the business of saving lives, really. So it doesn't, that piece isn't, I mean, it will matter if it's an increased distance, but, it would, again, we had an incident recently where we had to call in for another boat and it worked out. So, in any event, so my feeling is that we should put the boat back out to bid using the correct process. I don't see that we have any reason to keep it. So that's my feeling. What are other people's feelings?
Can I just add a comment? So I also wanted to add that, so Tom Goddard has been the fire chief for 21 years in Putney. And although I've been here almost 5 years, the relationships he's developed over the years with rescue and mutual aid, other towns, is amazing. It's profound. And I think with this agreement, I know with this agreement, I know where he's headed with this, because down the road, maybe in 5 or 10 years, you're gonna see more towns sharing, you know, this type of service. So I just want to say thank you to Tom for having developed these strong relationships with these entities. I think it's important.
And I would extend that appreciation to all of the local chiefs and officers. I mean, you know, those relationships are what make our system work. The mutual aid system works because the chief of all the different towns, the chiefs of all the different towns are able to communicate and function. And, you know, it's not always perfect.
No, it's not.
But the fact that we have, you know, we saw it the other day when we had, when there was a fire up on, off of West Hill on, off of Leon Woodruff, Orchard. You know, there were 7 different departments that responded to that. And that's the norm, and it's thanks to everybody and their participation in that. And I think that, you know, this holds strong with that as well. I think we also saw it a number of years ago when we had the discussion of maintaining Rescue Inc. in town versus not maintaining Rescue Inc. and that commitment to Rescue Inc. and to having a regional service that was involved. And granted, Golden Cross serves, I think, in many ways a parallel service just north of us. But Rescue Inc. has a long history here, et cetera. So, I mean, I think that what we need to consider is whether, I mean, we've made this agreement. I don't think we want to rescind it, I wouldn't think. The question is there any value in keeping the boat that we already have? And or do we need to put it back out to bid through a different process? Or do we reach out to the bidders that submitted bids and see whether they're still interested and how we go about it?
Let me say something and then I'll get to you. So I feel like one of the issues with the bid process is that it didn't follow the process that we normally have.
They weren't sealed either.
Yeah, there was just, you know, it was a limited audience.
Yes.
The only place I ever saw it was on Facebook. So you know, it didn't get the coverage it probably should have. You know, it didn't really give other municipalities a chance to bid on it if they wanted it. You know, there could be additional uses there. I don't know. So I don't know. I feel like I feel like we should just put it back out to bid using the right process.
I agree.
I don't think we have any place to store it either. So
We can make room.
Yeah.
we put a tarp over it or something.
Well,
it
was a better time to sell a boat
Right.
6 weeks ago
I know,
than it is
absolutely.
now. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't, I mean,
I mean, we could wait until we could tarp it and wait until the spring and do it then, if we feel like that's.
No, I would rather put it out to bid now.
Yeah,
And I think clearly include all of those people who
Right.
yeah,
were interested the
Yeah.
first time around.
Because we can put it on VLCT also, and you may have
Municipal interest.
a municipal fire department who would want the boat.
So I'm curious, the discrepancy between the
What we were told.
assertion that it needs a new deck and transom and the apparent evaluation that that isn't the case. Do we, what happened there? Where did this initial evaluation come from as far as how it was determined that we would need a new deck and transom? Do you know?
I don't
Yeah.
know.
So that's a miscommunication or a misunderstanding, seemingly. I mean, in many ways, I think that's irrelevant at this point because the boat that rescuing the agreement that we're in seemingly serves the purpose for us
Right.
much more effectively. Do we need any more definition of what this boat, I mean, it sounds like the opinion of the person who did an appraisal for it didn't indicate that it needed these repairs. I don't think that shifts its value necessarily,
Right.
but I'm just curious as to whether you know anything about that, but.
well, Tom, I asked Tom about that.
Yeah.
You did indicate that, that these weren't repairs that were imminent, that they were repairs that they were noticing that would happen in the next few years. And I can't remember exactly what he said about the floor, but I think his estimate was based off of replacing the entire thing as opposed to throwing down some plywood on the soft part or whatever you would do, in a less invasive fix for a boat. That number was based off of specific repairs that they were planning to do in the next few years. It wasn't necessarily that it had to be done right then. So I think that might have been the miscommunication.
Sort of the urgency of it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you still have a
I've
question?
got a question.
Okay, hold on, Charlie.
Oh.
Charlie,
I'm sorry.
one second. Do you still have a question?
My question's sort of ignorant, like,
Uh,
how does this boat get from here to there if it's being shared? And is it about the same size as the old boat?
I believe it's smaller than the old boat.
Smaller?
It's more versatile, but I believe we're on the hook for moving it from place to place if somebody else needs it.
So that's the only downside. It draws resources out of town, I guess. Personnel
But
But
I
we
think
would do
be
that
true
with
anyway.
our
Right, but
pontoon
this
boat
one is more
anyway.
versatile to go different places if rescue needs it somewhere.
This one is.
Right.
Yeah,
That's good.
yeah, there's an upside to that too.
Right.
Yeah, no, this boat is significant, they're very different boats. So it's almost hard to compare them as far as their functionality. I mean, a pontoon boat are those big flat ones that
Yeah.
you see,
It'll
just a
slow.
very different application.
No, I don't need to know the details. Because I wouldn't understand them. I
It's a
just-
big boat versus a little boat.
As long as it's whatever's going to take it where it goes.
Charlie?
Yeah, if we put this out for bidding again, does that raise an issue if one of the entities or people that have already bid objects to a new round of bidding, even though that person or entity may not necessarily know what the bids of other people are? In other words, could they object to the process? And
So
would that pose a problem?
the select board can reject any and all bids. So at this point, if we're gonna put it back out to bid and invite the ones that have already bid I'm not sure if there would be a problem with that.
My opinion about that would just be transparency.
Right.
To notify those people and
Right.
say, due to the fact that because of
The
whatever
process,
reason,
that it
the
was the
process
process.
was invalidated by our
Right.
policies. We apologize for the inconvenience and we're putting it back out to bid. If you're still interested,
Right.
please.
So the bids that we do have, if we didn't put it back out to bid and it was awarded to somebody, then they could come back and say, you
You
didn't do
didn't
this
follow your
right."
process.
Right.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
I recommend. that-
Double-edged sword.
Yes, that it goes back out to bid, all of the 13 get a re-invitation to bid. And, it can be with a letter, but they have to be sealed bids and they should come to my office.
So in other words, if they have the opportunity to bid again, there shouldn't be a problem.
No,
Okay,
And we probably have, give it that it didn't adhere to our policy initially, it wasn't a legitimate bidding process from our standpoint. So I think from a liability aspect, we're probably open to more liability by going through that process than by not reopening it.
yeah.
right.
But I might be wrong.
Thanks.
Okay, so I think we need a motion.
Are you concerned, Eric, specifically about the fact that there's a desire to sell this boat? I mean, we all agreed in the first place that we thought we were
Well-
going to, but do you?
Yeah, I mean, we agreed because we kind of had some, I guess I'd say misleading information when we looked at this, as far as the debt, needing a deck and, down the road. And then the boat, experts seem to say different. I don't know, I think my opinion, it's a good boat, it works well for what we do and what the town needs. And it'd be, a good piece of equipment to hang on to, but,
I wouldn't necessarily disagree with you, but I can't imagine that having two boats makes a whole lot of sense.
no,
And as we all know about equipment, if you just mothball it,
Yep.
it doesn't necessarily enhance it over
Right.
time.
Yeah, I would say unless we have an active use for it, there's no reason to keep it.
my only recommendation would be to say put that in, let rescue find another place for theirs, but keep ours in town, but, it is what it is.
And I think I would caution us against, I think it's an important discussion to have, but I would caution us against overreach as far as, and I know this, your longstanding relationship with the fire department, it's hard to separate that, but it's really not select board purview to decide what equipment, with the exception of figuring out financing, et cetera. If the fire department says this is the equipment we need and want, then we go with that recommendation. Except when it involves a town bond or something, if we say we can't afford to do that, and we're not gonna do it right now, and but that's where our role is limited to. So I think that, if Tom were to come back to us and say, really, this isn't gonna make sense for this reason or that reason, then we probably should rethink it, but otherwise I think we probably shouldn't.
And for what it's worth, when I talked to it, I got a really clear understanding of what went down and how it, and the way that he explained it to me, it made complete sense that we would
Desire the other boat. instead.
boat and start sharing resources in a more collaborative fashion, because as Karen pointed out, they're maintaining these fairly expensive pieces of equipment separately is not going to work in the long run. And I think the more collaborative we get with the surrounding towns, the better for all of us. So I felt like I much better understood what the situation was after I talked to him. So I'm in favor of the memorandum of understanding with rescue, and I'm in favor of getting rid of the boat, because I don't see why we would need it, unless somebody has a good reason why, like the town department, the public works would need it or something.
You have a hand up.
Heather?
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to have a few questions answered. I'm curious about, there was a statement about getting the pontoon boat versus this blow-up boat into the swamp, and I kind of wonder about how that would be accessed with either. I'm also looking at having worked off of both kind of boats, and what's an easier rescue, what's an easier, what's the word? Something that facilitates ease on the providers that have to go out there and pull people out of the water. One is more swift water training, one is for more kinds of water. The other thing I'm looking at is how accurate is the assessment of damage from one to another. We've had one professional and one opinion. And I'm trying to understand how one outweighs the other, regardless of the MOU. I'm not sure why we're trying to offload something that works, has worked, we already own outright and continue to do minor maintenance on, versus losing manpower and equipment. If this MOU falls through, where's our next boat come from? Brattleboro has one. I didn't know if you guys knew where the next one came from. These are all things I looked at. So if Brattleboro comes and takes their boat up to Jamaica, and there's a call in this area, and Putney is expected to have a boat, well, now there's no boat, but we had one. But we sold it because we didn't want to house it. I have a lot more questions than there seem to be answers.
Well, I mean,
That's
I don't think
mutual
there's,
aid, right?
I don't think there's any reason to assume that we won't have that boat that we are currently housing indefinitely. I mean, I think that seemed like it was the intent of the memorandum, was that this was an agreement, and I mean, there isn't a timestamp on it, so I guess that's not guaranteed, but I think it would be the assumption that that boat will stay with us indefinitely.
Or a similar boat for it with a different agreement, with a different group.
Right.
I mean, if Putney is the right place for a boat like that, because we have, access to 2 boat launches
Right.
pretty close by on the Connecticut River, then some other agency is probably going to ask us to house their boat with us. I don't see this as being. I don't see Putney as being without a boat because rescue goes away or anything else.
And having a more versatile boat is a benefit.
Yeah.
Maybe I wasn't clear. I keep hearing the word versatile. What makes this boat so much better? It's different, and I've worked off of both. And I'm trying to understand versatile.
One's a big pontoon boat that was retrofitted to be a rescue boat, and the other one is for rescue. It was the pontoon boat was originally from Brattleboro's dive team. It wasn't made for swift water rescue or anything like that. It's been retrofitted that way. So I guess I'm willing to entertain these questions, Heather, but I don't feel like this is, we've already rehashed this with Tom. I've already talked to him. I don't feel like we have a good reason to get out of this memorandum, and unless somebody has a good reason to keep the boat under a tarp for, 10 years just in case we need it, I think we should sell it.
And I just from an observer, I do a reasonable amount of boating. I think it would be hard to say that that boat wouldn't be more versatile. I mean, it's lighter, it's smaller, it's more agile. Is the pontoon boat perhaps a better platform for a dive team? Maybe. But as far as general rescue is concerned, I think it would be hard to argue that that would be that would be a better boat for it. But I also think it's really important for us to remind ourselves what our purview is. And our purview is not to decide what the best boat for rescue is for our department to have for rescues. Our purview is to oversee the sale of an object that's town property.
In the parking lot.
So
Yeah.
unless we are deciding we don't want to sell it for some reason,
Yeah.
and based on the opinion of our fire chief that we have an agreement that provides us with a boat that's better suited for their needs, which again is outside of our purview, then that shouldn't be our discussion, really. Even though you're right, we've sort of gone through it
We've already gone
already.
through it. So is there any discussion pertaining to selling the boat versus keeping the boat?
Yeah, I have one
Yes.
comment, Eileen.
Yeah,
I mean, if we were to change course and try to initiate this agreement, could Rescue Inc. essentially allege that we have reached the agreement? And in some way seek some sort of redress in court, making us stay with what we signed? Or are they basically, if we decided to revisit this and change our minds, maybe they won't care and they'll do something else?
I think Tom's relationship with rescue is strong enough where if this didn't work out, rescue would just take the boat back
And we'll figure something out.
and we move
Yeah.
forward.
Yeah.
Because they don't operate like that anyways, but,
Okay.
maybe
No,
I
and
shouldn't
again,
say that.
I think our discussion
Right.
is about the sale of the boat, not
Right.
about the
Yeah.
operation, not about the internal operations of the
Yes.
fire department, so.
It's kind of like the hazmat truck down at the station too. It belongs to the state, it sits in one of our bays. I don't know how many times a year it goes out, not very often, and, so.
It's an agreement we have, and it
Yes.
provides a service
Correct.
for the region.
Right.
all right, so is there any discussion about selling or keeping the boat? Any discussion online? Any discussion in the room? Okay, we do need another motion.
So the motion, I think, would be that we reopen the bidding process on the sale of the pontoon boat based on our existing sales policy. So I'll
Okay.
make that motion.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to reopen the bid process based on our existing sales policy. Is there further discussion among the board? Is there any other comment online? Is there comment in the room? Okay, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
All opposed?
Aye.
One opposed and 4 ayes, so the motion has passed. Okay, moving on to other business, closing comments. So we did have a select board work session, and it was pretty productive. We took the laundry list that was full of great stuff and tried to narrow it down to 6 priorities, right?
And just to be clear, that list is public information, so if anybody's interested in
Yeah,
it, you
it's-
certainly have
I think
access
it's
to
in
it.
the packet. Oh, was
Is it in
I
today's
didn't
packet?
put
It's
it
in-
in the packet.
Okay, it's in
today.
a packet somewhere.
Right.
So it is, but it is,
But it is
if
public,
anybody's interested, it's
It's already gone to the ARPA committee for their meeting tomorrow night.
Okay.
good.
But it doesn't identify what the 6.
I think
It
it was
does,
on
too.
on the
That
lower.
it does?
Yeah,
It's
on
on
the
the
lower
second
section.
page.
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
I missed that.
Yeah.
Okay, great. I
So-
thought we were just sending them the whole list.
No,
I
no.
was like, oh no.
Come on, Peg, you can sort that out for them, can't you?
I should put parking lot on the front page.
Yes,
Parking lot,
exactly.
that's
Move
right.
this to the top, and parking lot goes on the back.
Right.
Right. So, I mean, just to kind of recap what we tried to do was to pick fairly low-hanging fruit that we felt that we could accomplish in 6 months, basically before town meeting or by town meeting. Probably we'll reevaluate it at that point and see how we did, and maybe if we've accomplished some of them, we can take them off the list and put another one on, or come up with a different process. But none of us ever having done that before, I think we did get somewhere. So I thought it was a pretty good session. Does anybody have anything else that they want to say about that?
Can I make a comment? So I just want to thank the board for first showing up for the work sessions and working with me to get an understanding. And I know some of these ideas and projects will come in alignment with ARPA and the Vermont Council on Rural Development.
Yes.
So I
It'll
think,
be interesting to see whether what we identify as stuff that the community will also identify, or whether
right,
that'll be informative.
Yeah,
yes.
definitely.
So great job, because I've never done this process with any board since I've been here.
And just a touch of background on it, on that, what that laundry list is it was a list of all sorts of things, from policies to ideas about things that we have interest. Many of them, I mean, as far as policies or ordinances are concerned, some of them going back to 1996 that hadn't been updated since that time. The nature of our work is that the list gets bigger all the time, and we only get through so much in any given time. So this was an effort to at least evaluate how to make some sense out of that list and what the steps might be. Because I think I'm right in saying, there was essentially a list on a whiteboard in your office when you walked through the door, and there are probably several things that were on our list the other day that might well have been there in a different version, and that's true from when I came here 17 years ago. So
Well,
it goes on and it's fluid, but.
Yeah. Let me just clarify, I put the whiteboard in my office.
Sorry.
And I made the list, which I transferred to you, but I did find a folder that had select board goals.
The version of, exactly,
Yeah.
it was a different, it wasn't
So-
on a whiteboard, but it was the same
Right,
concept.
right.
Yeah,
Mine I can see.
yeah.
It's a reminder.
Okay, so my question is, can we put an agenda item on every time we talked about this?
Yes.
I don't know, number 10, 11, I don't know where we put it, that says report on priority projects. And where we just do a quick check-in on those projects so
Yeah.
that we're not letting them fall off
So, yeah, we did talk, in this
Progress
agenda, this
report.
agenda had gotten written before.
Yeah.
Met on Monday,
Yeah.
but, or whenever that was. Was it Monday?
Or
The
whatever.
other
It was
day.
Monday,
The
the
other
other day, yes.
The previous day.
I'm fine with putting something either, we could put other business closing comments reports, or we could,
But I think we need to identify it as reports on the projects that we've identified.
Well, I mean, we have select board unfinished,
Right.
could be under there.
which essentially is that, but whether we want a subtitle under there or subheader under there, that would
Okay, as long as
do
we
that.
do
But
that. that's all.
exactly, no, and I
Yeah.
think that would be up to, in the
Right.
formation of the agenda,
Yeah.
saying, what are we working
What are we
on
yeah.
this time? And
Maybe if we even just say select board unfinished, never mind. If we do it, it's okay, it doesn't have to be.
you know,
Keep it simple.
I know.
well, and the other thing is that if we make it a regular habit, then in your thinking about an agenda and you're thinking about an agenda, when we come out of one meeting or have a discussion in one meeting, you sort of say, okay, so what's the item for 2 weeks from now
Right.
that we need to
Right.
pick off
Right.
and try and get through them?
So what I can do is take your priority, your 6 priority areas, and copy it onto the back of the agenda, and then you'll have it. And just put a little flag
that's a
on
good
the
idea.
front.
Yeah.
That's a
that'd
good
be-
idea.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
And I'm not opposed to having the other parking lot issues somewhere.
Somewhere.
But I want
Yeah.
these things to be at the top and these things to be the
Maybe
priorities.
the parking lot we do a quarterly, you know,
Yeah,
as
we
a
visited
reminder.
our meeting, at our
Right.
work session. How often are we gonna have these work sessions?
Well, we're getting into budget season, so we're gonna probably have
So they're
extra
gonna be-
meetings on
Right.
those.
They're gonna be work sessions, but they're just not gonna be
Yeah.
called that.
All
Yeah,
right,
That's not to say that we can't talk about other things, but
Right.
budget season does tend to consume
yes.
the
We have to be a
bulk of the
little
time.
bit careful talking about parking lots, because as some people might remember, it took us years to figure out the parking lot down by the fire station. So that was a select board agenda item for many, many years,
Yeah.
that it wasn't, and it was just the parking lot.
It was the literal parking lot. I remember that.
Okay.
Wasn't simple, for so many reasons.
All right, so does anybody have other business online? In the room? Charlie, do you have anything?
No, that's fine.
Anybody else have anything? Under other business? All right, do we need an executive session?
no,
Okay.
unless you want.
I don't think so.
I'm good.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
There's a
Second?
So it's been moved and seconded to adjourn, all in favor? Aye. All opposed?
Fine.
All right, thank you. Oh, I did not give us did not remind everybody that our next meeting is going to be on September 7th, 2022 at 5:30 PM and on Zoom. So hope to see everybody there. All right. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.